The importance of margin in academics. That's what we're talking about on this Monday Moment. Stay tuned. So welcome to Viewpoint Christian Academy, where we have been helping families meet their Christian education goals since 1984. On this Monday Moment, I want to talk to you today about the importance of maintaining margin in the student's academics. Well, the first question, of course, that you might be asking is, what are you talking about? What is margin? Well, margin is breathing room. If you think about printing up a document or something along that lines, it will only print so far so that there's a little bit room on the edge, right? It's breathing room. It's if I were to let me make a financial comparison here to margin, because every good analyst will tell you that you need margin in your budget, in your finances. And what does that mean? If you have margin in your finances, if you have margin in your resources, well, basically it means that you have a little bit of breathing room. You've got space for life to actually happen, because we all know that you can budget and plan, but there's always going to be something that comes up. So you have to have that emergency fund. You have to have that breathing room in your budget. Meaning, if you make $4,000 a month, $3,000 a month, whatever it might be, you don't spend all $3,000 or all $4,000. You spend under that. You have some margin because you have to save. You have to plan for things that are coming down the road. A lot of times people are like, oh, Christmas just happened and I didn't know it was coming. I can't believe. Well, it's the same day every year. It just usually the idea is that people didn't plan ahead, so they didn't have money at Christmas time. So you have to plan ahead. You have to create margin in your budget so you plan for your priorities and for the things that are coming down the road. So if we're making that comparison to our academics, how does it work out? Well, it's really also very important to have margin in your academics, and particularly in a individualized mastery-based program like Viewpoint uses. You need to have a little bit of breathing room, a little bit of margin when it comes to assignment due dates or staying a little bit ahead of the game. So, why do we have to have them? But before I get into the why, what would that look like? Well, essentially, it would look like, instead of just, for Ignitia students, only working up to the line, only working up to what's due today, if you say, oh, I don't have anything that's due today, I'll just take the day off. Well, that's not a smart move, because what you're doing is you're using your margin up right then and there. You're actually dipping into your emergency space, if you would, and using it when you didn't really need it. So even if nothing is due for that day, and it's a regular school day, do an assignment anyways and stay ahead. Give yourself that margin, that breathing room. And that's really wise. That's really important. Why? Because life will happen. There will be a day when you'll be sick and you won't be able to work. But it'll cause stress in your academics if you're not able to work because you're sick, or there was an emergency that came up, a family situation. You're not able to do your work, but you don't have any breathing room, and so you've got stress now, like, oh man, I'm falling behind. Whereas if you had margin, you could allow yourself to use some of that and maybe catch up later, even bring that margin back if you wanted to, or just use it. Margin will remove the stress in those situations when life happens. And the other good thing about the margin that you want it for is that it pays dividends at the end of the year. What do I mean by that? Well, let's use this term, the Memorial Day factor. The more margin you have, the closer to Memorial Day you will be done. The less margin you have, the further away from that Memorial Day holiday you will be done. So, for instance, we've had some students in the past who have been so diligent and had such significant margin that they finished a week or 2 weeks even before Memorial Day. Now, typically in the Northeast, that's pretty much unheard of. You don't finish with your work until sometime in June. School's not done until sometime in June in Massachusetts for the most part. But if you're diligent and you increase and maintain your margin in your academics, when the work is done, your school year is done. It's not a matter of necessary. Again, what is it at our school? Learning is the constant, time is the variable. So if you get your schoolwork done a week, last year we had many students finish a week before Memorial Day weekend. And then most of the rest of them finished by Memorial Day weekend, but some, they used up that margin. They didn't apply themselves every day and get that work done and stay ahead and stay in the game the way that they should have. And so they had to go into June. So the more margin you have, the more of a Memorial Day factor you will enjoy. So I would encourage you in that. Let it pay dividends. Who doesn't want to be done in May? Who wants to go to school in June? Especially in this part of the country where you don't have too many warm days, so you want to take full advantage of that month of June and get out there and enjoy that summer weather, etc., so on and so forth. So it's really, really important. So let's talk about for just a minute, how do you work towards margin in your academics? What do you need to do? Well, if you are in a situation right now where you're a little bit behind, you need to treat it almost like debt, if you would. You might need to snowball a little. And if I'm confusing you, I apologize, but I would encourage you. New Year's coming up, right? We're here just about at Christmas time. New Year's coming up. If you haven't done one, do a Financial Peace University with Dave Ramsey, or take the Crown Financial course that's available. Those are great opportunities for you to really get a control of your personal finance. Okay, that's a rabbit trail. I apologize for that. But again, I'm making that comparison here, right? So how do you do it? Well, treat anything that's behind in your academics like debt. Work to try to catch up and get it gone. Get rid of it so that you can start afresh and anew by the beginning of 2021. So if you were behind in a subject, per se in Ignitia, you're behind, or let's say in your PACES, you're not right exactly where you need to be, work diligently to catch up and get ahead in those subjects. How do you do that? Well, keep some things in mind. Here's a couple things for you to keep in mind. One, the target dates of the quarter and the semester. Again, going back to that star chart that we talked about in academic balance, because academic balance is the best way for you to maintain margin in your schoolwork. But going back to that chart that we had, that star chart, you've got the 4 quarters, right? And if you're doing the paper PACE curriculum, every quarter you should complete at least 3 PACES, 3 units in each subject. If you're doing the Ignitia, every quarter you should be getting 2 or 3 units completed in each subject that quarter. Now, in Ignitia, it's really huge, really important that you keep the semester in mind. The end of the semester will be in January this year. So the end of the semester, the first 2 quarters comes by the end of January. If you're in Ignitia, every subject you should have completed the first 5 in those subjects. If you're doing PACES, you should have completed the first 6. If you're doing the paper curriculum, you should have completed the first 6 in each subject by the end of January. Where are you at in relation to that? What kind of margin do you have right now? The sooner in January that you finish that 6 or 5 criteria, that point, the more margin you have going forward. So use that as a target date right now and say, okay, we're going to catch up in everything and we're going to get some margin. We're going to get some breathing room. We're going to get some space by the end of January, keeping in mind the 5 for Ignitia or the 6 for the paper curriculum. Targets, goals by January, by the end of January. So keep that in mind. And how do you get that done? You maintain academic balance. And what does that mean? That means you complete every day. You complete work in every subject every day. And let me add a caveat to that, particularly for those of you that are in Ignitia. What does it mean to complete an assignment in every subject every day? It doesn't just mean to do work in every subject every day. If you complete an assignment, I'm talking about Ignitia now, the PACE work, it's a little bit more cut and dry, it's a little bit easier. You finish the pages, you score the pages, you get them done. You have to finish those pages. What does it mean in Ignitia? Just because you took a quiz doesn't mean you completed it. If you got a 68% on that quiz, if you got a 75% on that quiz, you did not hit the threshold to complete that quiz. It means you didn't really complete the assignment. You did some of it, but you didn't complete it. So you didn't really get something done in that subject that day. So you need to complete the subject. That means hit the threshold grades, 100% in lessons, 80% in quizzes. So keep that in mind too. And what is the best way to get and maintain margin in your academics? It's for the parents to check up on the child every single day. If you expect your child to maintain academic balance and do every subject every day, that means that you must check on it every single day. Mom and Dad, if you're not checking on it, if you're not going into their courses and looking to see if they hit the threshold grades, looking to see how they completed their work in Ignitia, if you're not looking at every page in that booklet every day, then you're really not doing your part to get that margin in their academics. It is the parent's responsibility to check on their child every single day. Use the parent portal in Ignitia if you have access to that. If you don't have access to that and you want it, send me a message. We can set you up with that. Or just go to this child and say, hey, show me your work for today. Look at the courses. See where they're at. Do they have margin, or do they have, in this particular, maybe they have behind? Maybe they have overdues, or they're not even close to where they need to be. Well, then it's your job to push them to get them back on track. So let me encourage you with that today. That we need margin in our academics. Hey, I hope that if this has been a blessing to you, you will give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already done so, share it with somebody. Maybe there's somebody else that you know. This is a pretty universal concept, the idea of margin in academics, especially for homeschooling families, students in an individualized mastery-based curriculum. They really need this concept of margin to be active in their academic process. So let me just encourage you with this. Hope you have a great day. If you need anything, reach out to us. God bless you.